Hey guys, Avatar Nut 4 here. It has been a long time. And as you can probably tell, we don't have all the professional equipment that a lot of YouTubers do because, hey, we're new at this. I started this, I looked the other day, 11 years ago, I started making Avatar and Korra
Has it been
videos.
that long?
It has.
Doesn't seem like Korra's
It
been.
has.
It feels to me like Korra was over like 5 years ago.
Yeah. But no,
But
it's been over it will have been over 10 years this year, which is hard to believe. But we are back, and I have been planning this. They announced the Netflix live action show, still with the original creators attached, back in September of 2018. And
wow.
ever since then I knew that was probably what it would take to bring me back to YouTube. So I have been.
And then the post-COVID resurgence
Oh, yeah.
of
Yep.
the original series from Nickelodeon, and the anticipation has just been through the roof.
Oh, yeah. And now Avatar Studios, so that there is no end in sight for Avatar content. We haven't even hit all the Avatar Studios stuff, so I'm sure we'll be back for all that, especially.
And even when it comes to just the Avatar content, like you're the full-on dedicated fan who's obviously watched the series multiple times, but you've read all the comics,
novels. Yeah, the Kyoshi novels, Yangchen novels. That's something we could do too. Oh my gosh.
I've not read any.
It's a little bit overwhelming, yeah.
I watched the cartoons, and that's it.
Oh yeah.
And even leading up to this Netflix show, I watched the trailers a couple times, but
yeah, you watched them once each.
Yeah.
So, like I pulled them up. I watched it like every few days. I know. I watched people react to it.
Taking breaks at work to go to the bathroom.
I did. So, transitioning, that goes into our hype and hopes for the show. So, I'll start with you. In terms of Netflix Avatar.
Well, I mean, I love the original cartoon, of course. Generally, as someone who does watch a lot of movies, I do a pretty good job of downplaying my expectations for most anything, just because I don't really want to have to worry about disappointment. So I just to kind of downplay it. I just like, but even with this, we've seen a live action adaptation of Avatar before.
We even reviewed it on this channel
with the 2010 movie. So
check that out.
That wasn't good. So my attitude was like, well, it can't be worse than that. Like I've already been disappointed once before. Yeah. So like I don't really see how you can really lose here unless your expectations are just through the roof.
Yeah. As you could probably tell with me talking about me watching trailers and everything, ever since day one, September, I believe it was 17th, 2018, on my lunch break,
how do you know
they announced Avatar. I know it was September. I don't know if it was that. And the OG creators were attached, and this was for Avatar Studios. I'm like, I was just excited to have something new. I didn't know for sure. The creators seemed to be wanting to do other things after Korra, and I was like, I may never see new Avatar again. So I was just hyped to get whatever. And I've always been somewhat optimistic, just that I'll enjoy whatever I get from the Avatarverse. Honestly, we're not even though it wasn't good, and we admit that, we are not overly critical nearly as much as a lot of people are about the movie. We'll still get it credit for what credit's due. But kind of like you just said, I knew it couldn't be like worse, and especially once I saw the trailer, I'm like, the visuals already make this look more loyal and just better overall. Yeah, as a fan. I can like you can just tell. Just take a shot from this of the bending,
and watch it, and be like, hey, that's cool.
Yeah, and so yeah, my hopes were hopes, and the hype for this for me was through the roof, especially ever since I saw the first trailer. I took off work to binge this on day one, even though it was Thursday. And yeah, and now I just binged it all again. Literally, like, we finished about an hour ago.
Yeah.
So
we didn't even really stop either.
We didn't. No. Just to stretch our legs a little bit. And I mean, it kept my attention all the way through, and we are going to transition now probably into some just overall thoughts and opinions, just summing up what we thought overall. This was my second time all the way through. This is your first time. What'd you think? Yeah. Generic thoughts. Short summary.
I was generally pretty pleased with just the the overall production quality, the way everything looked, when just the design, the actual effects, the cast as a whole, I
Yeah,
think um, overall it's a pretty solid adaptation. I think. So I mean, if I'm gonna be critical at all, just overall, it does kind of feel like a little bit. It's a bit truncated in terms of the actual story. They're taking this 20 episodes of animation, and you have 8 episodes, um, to where it does go through pretty quick, like in terms
mm-hmm.
of events from
It
place to
does.
place. Um, so maybe in that sense, I don't want to call it rushed, but a lot happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, just in general, it's really solid. So
I'm kind of the same way. I actually enjoyed myself this second time through. I do think I fell into the trap where I was trying not to be, where um I well, literally Avatar is my favorite show ever. And I'm not kidding. It got me into art and animation, and like I look at this show as like my inspiration. So even book 1, which is my least favorite book, I was so hyped for this, and I kind of fell into the trap a little bit where there were a few moments the second time that didn't bother me, where I was trying to tell myself I really wanted to see this. I didn't want to have like I didn't want to praise it if I felt like it didn't do something well just because it's new Avatar. I didn't want that, but I knew I wouldn't be. I honestly knew I wouldn't be too critical of it. I was really trying to look at it, and try to control those moments. And the first time watching, I there were several moments that I was disappointed in and let down in, and not necessarily. Some of those were very minor and just kind of like, oh, I kind of expected that to be translated a little bit better. Maybe having seen the trailer so much, I just played it through my head. I'm like, this scene's probably going to go like this, just because I was over analyzing and everything. The second watch, that's more of what I'm going to judge it on. This time, I enjoyed it a little bit more, and some of the things that bothered me really didn't bother me as much. We will get into some of those changes, but overall, I think it's very solid. I think the acting, for the most part, because honestly, with child actors, because most of these, this is one of their main first projects. Just to be fair, like
yeah,
sometimes, a lot of times you can kind of tell they don't have that experience in line delivery and timing, and especially all these characters. Honestly, by the end of the show, I fully like was convinced this is Aang, this is Katara, this
yeah. I
is
mean, and
Sokka.
Aang particularly, he's the youngest one.
Oh yeah, like
Like, how old
I
is he? 13 ish.
he was
Something like
12
that.
when they filmed. So
Yeah.
literally he was Aang in that moment. But oh, and we'll break down what we thought of the characters in a moment, but specifically, overall, yeah, the production design, I thought, considering it was still a Netflix budget, it's not like I mean, they spent a lot of money on the show. I think it's one of if not the top like a production cost for Netflix ever. So and you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely see it on screen. They with what they had, they did basically quite quite well in every aspect visually.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, very solid, and I was very pleased, very pleased. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
hmm And favorite, least favorite episode. Can you tell right quick, or I can go ahead and list mine
I go ahead.
if you need to think. My least is probably Into the Dark. That's episode 4. We'll get into some of the arcs later on with the changes and stuff. I felt in the middle. It I was a little bit more torn because I honestly enjoyed it a little bit more this time. But the first watch, I was not getting bored really, but I was just it slowed down and just I didn't I just it's hard to say because bored makes it sound like I
See,
didn't
this
like
is one
it.
thing I find this strange too. Is with this with this reduced number of episodes compared to the animation, you kind of have. I can remember a lot of episodes from the original series, kind of by their title, and just kind of know exactly what happened in each
Mm-hmm.
one. Into the Dark, there's basically several stories from the animation that are in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the Cave of Two Lovers being in there
Yeah.
because that's where the title comes from. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't really describe everything else that happened in that individual episode
Yeah.
because of all these different stories that are spaced out in separate episodes in the animation are just kind of being intertwined in some of these middle episodes,
Yeah,
and it kind of feels a little hectic.
it
Like
does.
you're not getting the same sort of, even though the animation episodes are short, they're only, 22 minutes, right?
Hmm.
You're still getting like it still feels like it's a bit more focused in on the specific character moments and exactly what they're going through.
Yeah.
And this is jumping around from different people in different places,
Hmm.
so it is a little hectic in that
Yeah.
regard.
My favorite episode would probably be, I think the best one is Masks. Um, how they handle, I think that's one instance of blending several storylines. They do that quite successfully, and they, while fleshing out more of Zuko's backstory, which we'll get into in some of the changes. I feel like that one was handled the best, and that, and also honestly, the first episode I thought kicked it off so well, and
Yeah,
the first 20 minutes was something really interesting.
I mean, it grabbed me in, and that's what it needed to do. So
And the character introductions, I was like, I have a great feeling about this after
yeah,
finishing. So
yeah.
in a
I did
way,
like the mask episode was cool. Just,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just sitting there the whole time like blue
Oh yeah,
spirit.
the masks. I think that's the best episode, and but the first one, for some reason, just how it drew me in and impressed me so much right off the bat. I
Probably, I mean, I guess
it's one of
the
those.
last one too as well.
Yeah.
Legends with
Yeah,
the
that one, especially upon rewatch,
ocean
I'll get
spirit.
into that,
Let's
and I'll go ahead and say
go.
it now. The book one finale of Avatar is, even though book one's my least favorite book overall, the book one finale is my favorite finale, therefore favorite episode in Avatar. I'm a big water tribe person, so the Koizilla monster, the spirits, ocean spirits, I own so much water tribe stuff. So for some reason, that one has always like just, there's so many cool, interesting things about it. You bring in the spirits, you bring in a lot of a full scale war and invasion, which at that point we hadn't seen, and honestly, we don't really see that much
Yeah.
later on in the show because a lot of the other
There's also just
battles are
the
more personal.
visual, particularly in the animation, but also in
Yeah,
this version, the actual visual component of the moon turning red and
it
then
turns red,
disappearing,
then it
like
goes gray,
it gets really
and the only
it's
thing lit up in
visually
color is
exciting
illuminated by
and
the fire.
creative.
It's
So
so cool and it's so inspired and everything. And so I was a little bit harsh on it the first time because that was,
and we get that little tiny bit of Iroh going off
oh
for the
yeah.
first time.
Yeah, so
It's like,
that one was very hard for me. I had seen that the Koizilla was in it from like the trailer they released prior to that. I wasn't sure if they were for sure gonna do it, but that one really impressed me upon second viewing because that was the main one I was ready to rewatch because there were a few changes I'll get into later, which kind of irked me just because it was my favorite probably episode of TV. So it, as much as you want to separate, you always have that attachment. So I was just like, but that one was certainly up there on my second watch. What about you with your favorite masks? From what you,
probably maybe the first and the last. First and the last episode,
I
some of the
think
mask was really cool in the
the
middle.
where this show is the strongest definitely is it starts strong and it ends strong. The middle's a little bit,
I mean, that's probably, I guess that's a good thing.
and
you know,
interestingly, the Brian and Mike, the original co-creators, were credited as being on the as co-writing those episodes, and that happened to be where they really nailed it,
hmm.
which is interesting. It makes
Yeah,
you think, but obviously the middle
yeah,
part is where they had to blend a lot and stuff. The beginning and end is kind of set in stone, so there was a lot they had to figure out in the middle. So I understand that.
yeah.
Okay, so moving on to characters. This can be acting and just like their arcs in the show because they did change a few things. Aang, I feel like uh, I'm not sure his pronunciation. That'll happen with several of these actors. I feel like Gordon Cormier, um, or Cormier, he really became Aang. Like he really captured the innocence of Aang. Like a part of it was just seeing it in real life this time. Aang truly was like 12. His emotional beats, it really hit you because you really felt you weren't looking at a drawing as well as it was voice acting and everything, seeing a real kid having to face these things and go through what he was. And I think he carried it very well. He was playful, he was emotional, he was serious when he needed to be, very reverent for like things of the Avatar,
He's
things of his culture.
better than the kid in the movie.
Let's not even talk about Ong.
I don't remember what was his name. I don't even remember what his
I
name
know
was.
Ringer.
Oh yeah.
Wonder what he's up to. Wonder what he
I
thought.
mean, maybe I shouldn't have called him out.
Oh, poor
But
Noah.
yeah,
But what do you think of Aang?
he was good. I mean, if we're gonna be critical of performance, his might be weaker than some of the others just
Yeah.
because he is the youngest one. But you know,
Yeah, I
he
did.
got the job done.
I was a little bit most worried about him just because I knew he was going to be the youngest cast member, and it was really important to capture all those sides of Aang because Aang's a really dynamic character for all those different reasons. But overall, I think he carried it quite well.
Yeah.
This is his main first role, so I was quite impressed, especially the look and everything. He really became Aang by the end of the season for sure to me.
Yeah.
Katara. Katara's my favorite character. I think the actress Keel Wintio, once again, pronunciations are difficult in this, but I think at the end of the season, looking back, she was given several more character beats and character moments to really shine and show her developing. They added a little bit more because honestly, in the first season, she didn't get quite as much. A lot of her stuff comes in later on, but I think in this they fleshed her out a little bit, and I think she did quite well.
Yeah,
Overall, it's pretty solid.
Progressively better.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning, I was
Yeah.
sort of like, kind of like Aang, where I was like, okay, good, but by the end, I felt better about it.
Yeah.
Like during that, watching some of the stuff in that final episode,
It really
like,
seemed like the characters and their chemistry and everything as it went along, you can kind of tell they were just getting experience, and by the end of the season, you can definitely tell. And I think Katara was probably the biggest one to say that about.
Yeah, in terms of an improvement almost.
Yeah.
In that way.
Sokka. I think Sokka, that was another one that a lot of people worried about in trailer reactions and everything. I think his look and his voice and his comedic tone for and timing for
Tone and timing.
what he had to try to replicate from the animation, he did quite well.
It's probably the most direct in terms of just a like for like comparison between both shows, and he was funny.
He was,
and which was nice. But all just in terms of just being Sokka, I think his is probably the most clear, transparent.
Yeah.
This is Sokka.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they did quite a bit with him too. They really, they removed a few aspects of his character early on that he had in book one, but they really honed in on his idea of what a warrior is and him feeling their burden and responsibility of being basically the man of the tribe with all the men off of war, and he's having to bear that responsibility, and you really see like the effect that the war has had on him, where it's there in the animation, but here it really, you see more serious moments with him while still working in some of that Saki humor. You really see him develop a little bit more as a character, especially looking at book one, Sokka, I think, which I really liked.
Yeah, he was cool. Liked him.
And next up is Zuko. Once again, I think he really started to nail the role. I will say he probably had the best martial arts choreography. Like his kicks were very clean.
Probably, yeah.
He's been in Shang-Chi. He was played the younger version of him, but he's been in several martial arts roles.
He probably also just gets the most in terms of as an individual character in book one who I actually see do the most direct fighting.
Oh yeah.
Like Aang does some.
Well, yeah, because
Katara is just sort of starting out.
The others, yeah, are either starting out or Aang, who's kind of like more
passive.
So he's always like head on. Basically, he's the most motivated for sure. So
yeah.
You really see
honor. That. Did he say honor?
He did not say honor.
He did not say honor once.
I did hear that in the first episode he could have they replaced it with glory. He was like he could have said honor.
Come on now, you couldn't have said it at one.
That is a little bit weird because they threw in a lot of stuff and you didn't think of honor. But anyways, moving on. Iroh. I think Iroh, he's different in the animation, but honestly, Iroh wasn't too developed really until later seasons. Like he was really kind of goofy and like just there on the ship as Zuko's friend, and
he's more stoic in this show compared to the animation starting out. Like instead of just being a bit more of a comedic kind of side character, he's a bit more polished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's a little bit more serious, but you know his is still he's able to deliver kind of both elements of just being kind of that jolly uncle, but also being this sort of sage and like um, guiding figure in
Mm-hmm.
Zuko's life and others.
Yeah, and um, speeding this along a little bit because these characters start to get less and less of screen time, so we'll have less to say about them. Zhao, as arguably the main villain of book one, uh, he did the job. I mean, he was there. He was good. I don't know. They didn't really add too much to his character.
I think they tied his motivations a little bit more into the political intrigue in the Fire
Yeah,
Nation,
that's true.
being connected with Azula and kind of
Yeah,
some of the stuff like trying to
he was a
vie
little
for
bit more
power
of
and things.
a mastermind behind the scenes and like involved in
Yeah,
some of that
they
stuff.
sort of
That's true.
added in a little bit like that,
Yeah,
so that was kind of cool.
but besides that, in terms of his portrayal and everything, I mean, he was fine.
Yeah,
He was good. Uh, then I'll just go ahead and combine these Ozai and Azula because they're basically Azula's really they're always either in the scene together or they're like going off of one another. Um, Obviously, both of these guys are new additions in a way because we never saw Ozai's face really. He was just kind of like a voice in one episode, apart from like his first introduction, season 3, episode 1. And Azula wasn't introduced until the very last shot of book 1. So all this stuff was basically new for book 1. And I mean, they both did really well. I think Azula's pretty promising. I think we'll get into a little bit more with some of the changes, but basically they hinted at some of the things of her past that we hadn't known prior, like her and Ozai's relationship, what it really was, what he wants from her. And you always kind of got it. She's like, oh, she was the favorite child. She got everything. She's perfect. And her father's just proud of her for basically being kind of like him.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
But this, they kind of made it, you saw the pressure he put on her too in a different way. And he kind of used, and he also manipulated and used Zuko's situation as a motivator for her basically to become a bigger weapon for him to use, which is kind of cool. I think that added to her a little bit. And then others, it's kind of more like kind of cameos. May and Ty Lee, like they're there for fans. They don't really do much. It's kind of just be like, hey, there they are.
Yeah.
They won't do anything really until season 2. So we will move on, and I will say the overall positives for me, it did keep the overall vibe and tone. There was a mixture of, there was a little bit more of darker elements slash realism to it. It's a little bit richer than the original, of course. With book 1 is by most people like their least favorite book in Avatar, just because it started out, the first half in particular is a little bit more childish. There's a lot more side adventures that don't really matter as much.
You get some combat.
You do
some proper combat in the show. So,
but overall, you still got some of the fun-loving, like just fun aspects of it, like you were watching the original one again every now and then. There are many references, many lines of dialogue that were exactly the same. Where you're like, "Hey, he said the line."
They copied quite a few things, or if like I don't know if any particularly stood out to you where they directly copied anything.
I liked. I was wondering how much of Boomy they would put in because it's so comedic and kind of silly. I didn't know how it would land in live action, but I think
they did quite a bit of it, like with
and the lettuce leaf,
the rock
candy, Kangaroo Island. Even though it wasn't the same joke, they still basically had that same.
Yeah,
that was the main one because I was wanting lettuce leaf to be brought up, and it was.
I think one thing I noticed in terms of keeping exact dialogue is when Kaya gets basically the opening narration from the show. She delivers those lines in the first episode, talking about Aang.
Yeah.
Like
you mean Gran?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say
I didn't mean Kaya. I meant Gran.
Mom talk.
Yeah, I meant Gran.
No. Yeah. That was a big one because I remember I was watching. I'm like, oh, that was the introduction. That's cool.
Which I felt it was kind of neat because it's kind of just kind of basically telling the story of the sort of as generations have passed. So
Yeah,
it
and
kind of
it
made
makes
sense.
sense for her, like the wise elder in the village, knowing the history and passing that on, like kind of like a legend. But it's also like it's clear that all these kids in the tribe growing up are going to learn this as history. So I think that worked really well. That was kind of cool
Yeah,
that they did that. Um, we already kind of talked about overall visual effects, sets, costumes, choreography. Overall, pretty solid.
yeah, pretty
Um,
solid,
the score I
decently
liked.
intense. I mean, they kept some of the elements,
Oh yeah,
the core elements of the themes for various characters and places.
yeah, that was very fun because the Fire Nation theme, the in the finale you hear the original Aang like or Avatar Triumph music as they call it when they do something cool. Um,
Yeah,
they fleshed out a little bit of the story and lore in ways that weren't necessary, but were kind of cool. I mean, I always like it when they enrich the world like one like this where it's like so there's so much to pull from.
I mean, the biggest thing with that they expanded on was like we already sort of mentioned was the Fire Nation and stuff.
Yeah.
Like Azula appearing at all, like Ozai, sort of the
Some more of Zuko and Ozai's relationship too. Just their
yeah, and
conversations.
Zuko and Iroh as
And
well,
Zuko and Iroh,
and
yeah.
Iroh and his son.
I loved what that really solidified their relationship that you is clear in the animation, but what they added, like him Zuko really showing compassion and sitting with Iroh and respecting his son at his son's funeral and saying how much he meant to him and giving him a little trinket that his son gave him and basically being there for him when he needed him and Iroh did the same when Zuko had no one.
Yeah,
That really was impactful.
like yeah, the way he gave up basically his wife to go with him
Hmm. Yeah,
into exile, basically.
that did so much for that relationship. Um, and also one of the things for Zuko I liked was they made the crew of his be the crew that was willing to be sacrificed by the Fire Lord, and they go through the same thing where the crew is like, oh, he's just a selfish prince. He only cares about himself. And Iroh's just like, you don't really know what you're talking about. In the animation, they kind of just feel sorry for him because his father basically abused him and banished
Mhm.
him. And they're like,
They
oh, that poor
they
kid.
directly tied his actions to their um
In standing up for him,
yeah.
which led him to be burned and banished, which was the
It
right
was
thing to
actually
do.
cool. It made that story from the storm in the animation. They actually made it
Yeah.
even more impactful by adding that element to it, which was
He
really
ended
cool.
up saving those people and saying this isn't right. And they learned that and like really started to have respect for him, which was really cool. And yeah, that once again, it's a mask episode. The
Yeah,
episode's fire,
yeah,
literally.
yeah. They added a bit too. It was interesting. In the Fire Nation, we see the fact that there was an Earth Kingdom spy there at the very beginning
Mm-hmm.
when he basically finds
Yeah.
out the plans for the
Oh yeah.
invasion.
Oh yeah.
At the very beginning, we also see the fact that there were dissenters from the Fire Lord. Basically, they were like willing to go in and try and take him out.
Yeah, that added to some of the
It's kind of political intrigue,
yeah,
more or less espionage
which
stuff.
we kind of got into like the whole idea of like not the whole Fire Nation is evil. There's people in the country that they're honestly the kids as we saw in the headband in the original show are being brainwashed or being taught basically we're in the right. All these people are standing up against us and all this stuff. That typical thing where it's cool to think that in hidden in these nations there's some people even in the Fire Nation there's some people that don't like what's going on. It just makes it a little bit richer,
Yeah,
and they took advantage of that pretty well. And then, of course, they added a few bits and pieces from the novels, comics, and even referenced something that was brought up in Korra, which is also cool. Just to
so what were all those things? Because I don't,
so
I recognize the this force fog in the spirit
the
world.
Fog of Lost Souls, as mentioned, is described as, and also the name of like as exactly as it's described and depicted in Korra, where it's the fog that basically torments you by showing you your darkest memories. In Korra, it was more as an intentional prison that spirits capture humans and throw them into for trespassing in their land or in their world.
Yeah, because I noticed that. I don't think there was really much else I noticed.
Um,
Not having read a bunch of
Mother
stuff.
Faces, that was the Ko relic that Roku stole from Ko that Aang had to return. That was a that was kind of minor, but it was just kind of cool to throw something from the comics too. That was strictly from the Search novel or graphic novel, so that was kind of cool. I mean, they used the exact design, which is pretty awesome
And I
design.
guess there's also the presence of stuff with Kiyoshi, some of her
Oh yeah,
past.
the Kuruk stuff, the Kyoshi stuff, those are straight from the novels. So that was really cool, and yeah, I was really wondering if they would do that now that we have so much more information and world building since Avatar Book One especially started. Like that's crazy. They did not expect this. It's literally 19 years later. They would not have thought of this.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but I was wondering if they would like name drop. They name drop lion turtles early. You know, I feel like they have that advantage where they can like
Yeah.
really enrich this. Where
Squid
I didn't
sharks.
know if like they would have a portrait of Juan as the first Avatar, or you know,
That'd be freaking awesome.
or mentioning Rava as the light spirit and Vatu as the dark spirit, or having the spirit portals in the distance where you know what it is, but it's not. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more of that, but at the same time, that's not really a critique because I mean they weren't invented back when they
Yeah.
made this. It's not a make or break. I was just thinking like, oh, it's a spirit portal that might have been kind of cool, but you know, that was just me being liking Korra a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, Koizilla, at the end, if you don't know, that's a name coined by the fandom because he's basically Water Godzilla.
Yeah.
At the end, people were wondering if they would do it. It's a budget thing, but also logistically, how would that work and translate? And I think they translate it very well for being basically kind of a ridiculous concept. In animation, without a doubt, it worked. I mean, animation, you're able to get by with a few more things easily. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just giant fish, basic koi fish, with Aang floating in the middle of it,
The spirit of the
towering over
ocean,
the city.
just basically trashing warships.
And I liked how like it was clear he was like straight up like killing a lot of people.
It was cool.
It was really cool. And I
I
also
like
liked
wanton violence.
in that scene, and the animation is so epic because there's there's moments where like I mean it's the music is pumping and it's so epic, and in this when Koizilla reaches the ocean for a while it's silent, so you hear it scream and like you hear the metal creaking in the ships and them just launching. It was very cool. um so yeah, I'm just happy they did that. They kept all the coloring like we talked about in the finale with the black white grayscale with the fire illuminating color. That I mean that's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
More past avatars, like we mentioned, they added stuff, a little bit more stuff with Kyoshi, Kuruk, and the main one they didn't bring up is Yongchen, except for in statue form. He didn't contact
Yeah,
her.
she gets referenced at the end, but yeah, it was
Yeah.
interesting that he basically communicates with the other three,
Mm-hmm.
Kiyoshi, Kuruk, and
Yeah.
Roku, all in the first season, which is basically they don't even appear in the show that much until like the very
They
end
don't.
when he sees them.
With the exception of Kyoshi and Roku, they didn't show up until Sozin's Comet.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
it
kind
was
of cool.
cool to see them because that's
Yeah. Once again, it adds to the lore that
yeah,
Aang would have
and,
more
in a lot of
opinions
ways,
to talk to.
yeah, in a lot of ways it also made sense because
Yeah.
traveling to places like
It's
Kyoshi
logical.
Island, traveling to the Water Tribe, where he actually, yeah, that's who he talks to because of the places he's in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So getting into changes, there's more of like kind of like we've already talked about darker elements and tone, and kind of what I mentioned to him while we were watching the finale, just like 2 hours ago, was I liked in this a little bit more of the realism. They were able to, or I guess because Nickelodeon, especially Book One, back then they were really kind of a little bit strict with what they could depict, even though it was a show about war and genocide. I mean, we'll mention that next, but I like that you saw aftermath of battle. Like in Water Tribe, it was clear a lot of people died, and a lot of people were wounded, and you saw like that they had just been through battle. Blood was on their faces, and
yeah,
it was kind of cool. It just made the story like come to life a little bit more. It was kind of cool.
yeah. I mean, the cartoon does show Gyatso's body.
It does.
So.
Oh yeah. It just shows a little bit more of it. And getting that now in genocide stuff. I mean, that's what I wanted since day one. A lot of people never wanted to see it because they're like, it's not important.
It's like the Rogue One in the Star Wars universe, where it's just like there, and the genocide is sort of like everybody wants to know.
It's this dark thing that everyone wanted to know what happened, and
it was one of those things where I almost still kind of wanted more of it.
Oh yeah, I wanted honestly a full.
They give you some of that as an episode, but if they could have made the whole,
which I'm happy they threw in,
if they could have made
because they didn't have to.
the whole first episode,
Yeah.
just that, and then basically at the very end, Sokka and Katara find Aang in the eyes.
Yeah, I thought that how they opened with that, and you're like, what's going on? And then the Earth Kingdom captors brought to Sozin, and he like literally lights him on fire. And he's like, we have to kill them all. You're like, oh crap.
It's like they're going there.
And all the air nomads were traveling for the Great Comet Festival, which is new to the show.
That was pretty interesting.
But it makes it a little bit more logical too.
Yeah.
Because
like,
when you think about it, all these people, the air temples on the other sides of the world,
they launched
in the span of a comet.
They launched a strike on all these temples.
Like, it makes sense that air nomads they're very peaceful and they're very like spiritual, that they might celebrate a celestial event together and come together. It seems like something they would do. Yeah. And they're nomads, so they travel and stuff. And it was just made sense. So that was just an explanation we didn't really know we needed, but it was kind of like, okay, cool. But yeah, I love that they showed that. It made, and there was some pretty awesome airbending, because we never really get to see much of it. I mean, it's pretty cool. The tornado that the female airbender makes is probably my favorite moment. Where it pans up and she spins around, and then Sozin toasts her in her own tornado. It gets pretty dark, especially watching that as the first scene. I was like, wow, we are seeing them die. They're and basically burn alive.
Yeah,
it's pretty.
They didn't directly show the kids getting killed.
No, that would have been. I was wondering if they were going to corner the kids and just roast them.
I'm not rooting for that, but
that's
they were there.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, they expanded a lot upon the relationship of Aang Gyatso, which I like too.
Yeah, that was cool. I still kind of feel like not just for the genocide aspect, if we could have gotten a full episode, basically pre the events of the show.
Yeah.
To see a little bit more of Aang interacting with other airbenders.
Yeah.
In the temple, just because we didn't see the test of them identifying him as the Avatar.
That's actually something I'm surprised they didn't add.
Like showing the tests, or maybe how he was, just his interactions with some of the other kids. Like maybe him getting his tattoos or something. They could try to be born if they wanted to. Yeah, I don't know.
That would have been kind of cool.
I felt like they could have done more there if they really wanted to.
Yeah. But I am very happy that they included that, because I honestly didn't know if they would, and they did. So that's pretty awesome. I at least have like 20 minutes of that scene that I've always wanted to see. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, some of the stuff we already talked about, so I'm just gonna skip it. I'm a big Katang shipper. I had to bring this up. A lot of people talking about it. It obviously in the show, Aang has this very like innocent but like kind of adorable child crush on Katara, who, even though they're only 2 years apart, seemed like Aang's this like goofball and shooting a shot right when he gets a release from the iceberg.
They didn't go penguin sweating.
They didn't. Which, I think what they're doing is, I do definitely see moments of that. Now, I am a Katang shipper, so maybe I find it in everything. But
same people are.
At the end, through the season, you see them they really have this special bond, and just how they talk to each other. And also at the end, Katara says, "I need you," basically. So
yeah,
that's proof right there. No, I'm just kidding. But
she hugs him.
There's moments where I think
when at the air temple,
they'll try to do
even when
she's the one that's comforting him.
It was a bit more of just like, because in the animation she kind of grabs his hand and everything. Yeah, but it actually was a bit more to it almost with him. Yeah, with the hug between them.
Yeah, there's definitely moments of that, and it starts out. You see a little bit of a progression. Obviously, this is still pretty early on, but I think they're setting up a more realistic progression over the few years, probably.
Speaking of progressions, so that might be a bit more gradual, but Suki and Sokka, that was not more gradual. They were like right off the bat.
I loved it though. But yeah, it was a little bit.
I mean, everyone loves a good sword and a fan.
And it was funny.
Like, yeah, I
she kept showing up.
She kept showing up. Like,
in that moment, she's just glaring at him while he was like getting ready. Yeah, it was just funny. But yeah, there was a lot of flirtation in the animation, but there wasn't like, they didn't like kiss. She kissed him on the cheek in the animation. In this, they basically got together, and then it was like, oh,
basically got together, and I'm sitting there thinking, just a few episodes from now, Princess Yue is going to be showing up. So
a part of me honestly kind of wished, since they were changing a few things, I'm like, with how they ended that, and Suki had a clear arc in this, which once again is honestly tied very loosely to her comic as well. I forgot about this, Suki Alone, where it talks about her wanting to explore the world, and he inspires her to go out and make a change in the world. That's touched on a little bit in season 2 of the animation, but when they go back and she's not there. I actually wondered for a split second, because I knew there were changes, if they would actually change it up a little bit and she would join Team Avatar early and she would go with them. But maybe that was just what I wanted. Like, that was adorable. Join them.
That would have been pretty cool.
Just because it bothers me when people say she's not Team Avatar. She fought in Citizens Comet. She's Team Avatar. I don't care what they say. I think that would have been an okay change. People would have hated it.
It would have been interesting because
I was actually wanting that
because she wanted to see the world basically.
Yeah, I think that dynamic would have been cool. But hey, what we have season 2. Well, hopefully. It's not officially greenlit yet. I mean, but it's doing quite well. So
pretty much gonna happen.
Yeah. There, Iroh Morning Lieutenant, we already talked about. I love that they showed that funeral, and we've already talked about the main highlights. You even see Ozai. He shows up, but he's kind of just like, he says what he's supposed to say and just leaves. It clearly shows Zuko and Iroh is the real relationship there. And who knows, we may... and a little hint, talking about the score too. If you listen closely, they play Leaves from the Vine in the instrumental version. And it hit me this second time. I heard it on Twitter, and not gonna lie, I got a little teary-eyed.
I didn't notice that.
They worked it in the score. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing to me? But yeah, that was nice. Skipping through, one of the main changes was in episode 5, Spirited Away. That one's one they really completely changed what happened. It started where you're like, oh, this is just going to be the Hey Bye episode leading into the Roku episode, basically that 2-parter brought to life. But Hey Bye is basically replaced as the main spirit to face.
Yeah, the Hey Bye thing was basically the framing of those episodes.
To get him into...
Like, it was the framing. It was like, he was there, he goes into the spirit world.
And we did see him, and he looked awesome.
Does stuff with, like, Ko and, like, the fog and everything.
Yeah.
And then comes back at the end.
In the spirit world, all that stuff's completely different.
Yeah. It comes back for Hey Bye at the end.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just framing the actual thing of him with Ko.
Yeah.
Ko's creepy as heck.
Oh my gosh. I always joked and like, I do not want to see them in live action. And they did quite well, especially the flashback where you just see his mask on soldiers' faces. And it like...
They even showed the, like, baboon face.
Yeah, they showed all the faces that he shows in the show, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Even though they took away the angle, like, show no fear or emotion, basically they kind of made it like he tricks these humans, like, kind of like finds them, lures them in, and basically we see him basically steal someone's face off their body with and leaves their skull, which once again is kind of dark.
Which is cool.
I mean, awesome. They still kept that aspect of the character. It's a little bit different.
The face stealer.
One thing I will say is, or I've seen a lot of people saying this, one big moment from season 1, I don't really think, especially watching it again, it really mattered as much because they get it in the North Pole. They removed the initial Zuko and Zhao Agni Kai from episode 3. Yeah, I think it's good for launching that competition between them, because Zhao's kind of like, honestly, he kind of bested me.
Yeah, but
but it honestly,
I don't think it's that necessary.
Because you still get it in the North Pole.
Because you already know anyway that they're both going after the same guy.
I think that's okay.
They're trying to curry favor with the Imperial family, basically.
One thing that is a big talking point, which basically they gave Kyoshi several of Roku's moments where Aang happens to come into contact with Kyoshi first, so she's more of a mentor to him in a lot of aspects initially, and also she's the one that takes over his body and basically shows off the Avatar state instead of Roku at the Fire Temple in this.
That was cool.
Oh yeah, it doesn't really bother me. I've seen some people.
It doesn't really matter which one it is.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Honestly, timeline-wise, he came in contact with her first, so...
They do show the Fire Temple as well. So
and honestly, because of
awesome.
Honestly, because of her novel and everything, she's honestly more popular anyways. Honestly, that's probably the reason they did it, which is fine with me. Let's see. I will say Roku took a little bit of a backseat. I wanted to see a little bit more of him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if the whole idea in this episode is that they encounter Kyoshi Island... and it's book 1 water, the previous Earth and previous water avatars would play a bigger role in terms of who he talks to than Roku.
Hmm.
But Roku's freaking awesome.
Oh yeah,
So
we'll see more of
I
him.
want more Roku. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see more of him. Uh, let's see.
The Avatar and the Fire Lord is my favorite episode from the animation, so
Yes.
I need all that Roku.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I will say, they kind of alluded to it when he was talking about friendships and how they can interfere with you being an avatar. I'm sure they were referencing, or he was referencing in show, like him and Sozin.
Yeah.
I wish they would have said that, just to add a little bit more to it, even just through dialogue. They didn't even have to show it. I feel like they were like, he was like, to Aang, basically, he could go ahead and sow the seeds, also be like, be careful who you befriend. Because
Yeah.
as the Avatar, you may have to make tough decisions
Yeah.
if they go the wrong path.
That was pretty interesting to have it, even
Yeah.
though it wasn't really explicit. You kind of had to, if you know the story,
You know the
obviously
animation,
recognize it.
Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
Because each Avatar honestly told him similar things. Where, I mean, Kyoshi was like, when you need to, you have to stand strong and basically do whatever it takes.
Everyone out.
Which is Kyoshi. Cure Kyoshi, as Roku even joked about. Her being so stoic and everything. And Roku was basically talking about that. Like, be careful with your friends not to let them hold you back or interfere with what needs to be done. And Kuruk was kind of reinforced that same idea, actually. But he has an interesting backstory that I won't really get into in this. But it's really cool to hear him, because he's kind of forgotten about for the most part, which they even say in the show was kind of interesting. But there's a few changes in the lore of the finale. One thing they kind of, it's not really that big of changes, but they kind of make it a little bit more complex, where they add a celestial event as why Tui and La are in their mortal forms, versus in the animation it's basically just like they crossed over near the beginning and just wanted to be more mortal.
Yeah.
And they're always there. But they made it sound like there's the ice moon, and that's the one night of the year or something that they're in their mortal forms.
Take that form.
Which
I don't really know why that was necessary.
No, that's one thing. Like, that just became something because you had to explain.
It's not like the Fire Nation referenced it. It's not like the Fire Nation like, oh yeah, we have to attack now because.
Yeah. Like, to me, what if Aang wouldn't have been there? Would they have attacked anyways? To me, that was just kind of something that they didn't need to add, like, at all. So I thought that was kind of weird. One thing I will say, in the North, actually, I feel like they needed a little bit more time. You never actually see Katara training with Paku at all. Aang never waterbends in this season. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I noticed that because
he never really learns waterbending in the original.
Yeah, but even when Katara's practicing like the water weapon stuff, he never does it.
I thought she was gonna show him like, hey, you might as well start training. It's a little weird they didn't do that.
Yeah, they didn't have him do it at all.
In this, basically, they get to North Pole and they're already preparing. Even like
at the very beginning, when the Avatar state causes him to like basically bury Zuko's ship in ice in the show, they didn't do that. Like, Aang does not waterbend.
They talk about now.
Like, I mean, obviously when he's like freaking.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That is an interesting choice. But they end it basically where it needs to be like Katara needs to train him because they need to get going.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's supposed to be a time skip because of their filming schedule. How now they've lengthened the timetable where like Sozin's Comet is not coming like by the end of the year. Like, obviously the actors will be way older by the time they get greenlit to film the other seasons. Maybe they could say like afterwards, since they have a little bit more time, they stayed in the North Pole and were training. That's how they could work that in, I guess. Helping rebuild while training and stuff.
Yeah, maybe that's fine. I don't know if there was anything else that was like.
Let me see.
What else did they change with the?
There's, I will say they in the finale this time. One of the things that kind of bothered me and didn't really bother me the second time through. Once again, Season North is my favorite episode. You never actually see waterbending fighting. You see Paku versus Katara, but like the Fire Nation waits to invade until the moon's gone. In the animation, they're already invading, and Zhao takes out the moon while they're in there. So it's kind of cool.
It does seem a bit more tactical to wait.
Oh yeah,
but
no, yeah, that's why it's not a complaint. I was kind of disappointing because water's my favorite element, so you never really see them in combat, like full on masters. That's you don't see Paku like make this cyclone of water.
Yeah,
Katara did do some cool moves versus Zuko, so I guess we did get that.
Hers was cool.
I just thought that was an interesting change. one thing I will say is, and this kind of goes into Korra a little bit. Zhao's death, Iroh kind of takes him out in defense of Zuko. It's the same way where Zuko turns his back and is basically shows him mercy after besting him, and then Zhao strikes and Iroh in defense basically makes this iron chain and like whips him and like basically sets him on fire and he falls in the water.
Yeah.
Which I always liked in the animation, the spirit takes him out because he killed its partner.
Because he killed the spirit.
I was disappointed in that because I always thought that was so epic. And also you get the moment of Zuko once again showing his humanity, tries to save him.
Yeah,
he's so boastful and proud. He's like, no, I won't take your hand. And then the ocean spirit literally just drags him and around him.
Yeah,
that's one change I really wish. That's the main complaint now I have about the finale. And also, obviously, in Korra, he shows up in the spirit world, so that doesn't make sense.
There's also the fact that Yue's fox.
Oh yeah, that was next.
What was the purpose?
Once again, that was an addition that doesn't add anything. It doesn't. I don't know what. Like, if they wanted to say she's part spirit, so she goes into the spirit world, that's fine. But why the fox angle? Yeah. Why couldn't she just be there in a spirit?
Obviously, she has this connection to the moon spirit. I guess
because if she's part spirit,
maybe it's a way for her to have been introduced to Sokka before they get to the North Pole.
But I still think
sort of happens. But
by the form of a fox.
But it's just weird to see this three-tailed looking fox.
It would have been kind of cool if it was like a foreshadowing, but she didn't know it, of her in her moon state in the spirit world, where she's a floating mist. Yeah. And he would have seen her.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, you're so-and-so. I thought that was weird.
Kind of like the swamp gas. And
yeah. That was her future animation. But she didn't know that.
That would be interesting. But the fox was weird. Because
that was very weird.
Talking to Sokka, and I'm thinking, who's
it's not important. Once again, it's one of those things that's not important. It's not necessarily a negative. It just leaves you like, why? That did nothing.
It's like, I'm not sure who came up with this idea and what exactly the purpose was.
And it just took time from the episode that could have been used something else because she explained it for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just kind of weird. I will say, and also, one missed opportunity. They had Wan Chi Tong. Okay, Wan Chi Tong was cast as a voice leading into the show. So I was like, oh, this is awesome, because what the connection I made, we know from the animation that Zhao gets the information about Tui and La, the moon and ocean spirits, from the library. I was like, this is going to be sick. He's going to go on a mission before he has to invade the water tribe to the library, and actually we'll see that, and possibly confrontation with Wan Chi Tong.
Yeah. But he doesn't.
And burning down the fire section of the library like we see. But they change it now, which the change is fine. But the fact that they had Wan Chi Tong basically as a cameo. Just be like, hey, that's Wan Chi Tong.
They had a perfectly valid reason for him to be in it.
Yeah.
And they didn't use that reason for him to be in it. They just put him in there.
Cool, because when he showed up, I'm like, okay, we're still going to see him with Zhao, right? But no. They just change it.
It was just him.
And that was a missed opportunity, because you're like, do it for the fans. Come on. I mean, he still gets the information.
I mean, maybe I thought they didn't want to
spoil the library.
Well,
literally what it was probably was just like, we honestly have this set already at the Fire Temple. Let's just have them get it here. Because they have all the old artifacts and stuff.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit disappointing.
I also think, it makes me think, in terms of spoiling stuff, this made me think about it too. In the episodes with Amashu, they sort of have this element of, they talk about corruption in the city because they move the Mechanist to where the Mechanist is in the city, and there's Fire Nation, like,
a lot of stuff is in Amashu.
Spies and stuff, Jet and everybody's there, so there's fighting in the streets. One thing I find interesting about that is basically having these freedom fighters in the city, agents in the city. It does make it feel kind of similar to how Ba Sing Se feels in the animation. So I do wonder, and like we said about not spoiling the library, how is Ba Sing Se going to really feel much different from what they've already done with Amashu?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, they have the whole Dai Li hypnotizing angle. It'll be interesting to see that. And also, we don't know how long.
We know they wanted to play up the political intrigue with what they've done with the Fire Nation, so maybe they could do more of that with the Earth Kingdom.
Yeah,
But
they can make it even more
but
corrupt.
that's one thing I was noticing. It's like this does kind of feel like what we get with Ba Sing Se just later on.
Yeah. I do think though, with all that they had to juggle in that episode, in particular in episode 3, episode 4 is the one that I really felt like just there were a few things that just didn't work. Episode 3 was quite well handled with all that they juggled.
But there was still so much going on.
There was a lot going
so
on,
many
though.
stories intertwined.
Yeah.
Where it was just sort of like it kind of got a little confusing.
Yeah.
In terms of like, so okay, here's the Mechanist story going on here. We got Jet and everybody here. So I guess you can call it the gang when it's only 3
And
people.
then you also have Aang versus Zuko.
Yeah, yeah. And
There's a lot.
And they all go their sort of separate ways.
Yeah.
In the episode. So it was a little jarring.
Yeah, it was. Certainly I think episode 3 and 4 are the weak points.
Yeah.
Let's see.
3, 4, 5,
Any more changes? I
can't think of anything.
I can't really think of anything really. A few things on my wish list that I really didn't get. I kind of wanted to see a little bit more fighting in the finale, but I kind of got over that but I just wanted to see more Master Waterbenders doing their thing. But then I kind of wanted upon thinking about it, it kind of surprised me. One major thing, I think they should have somehow found a way to do Amashu in one episode, just do the King Boomy stuff and maybe a few elements of the other things, and find some way to work imprisoned in there. I think the idea of seeing a basically Earth Kingdom town that's been taken over right early on their mission, and Katara convinces them to fight back is kind of important, because that kind of launches, they're like, hey, we can make a difference.
Yeah.
I think it would have been, if they could have found a way to do Amashu in one,
it's interesting
and that before
it's interesting that's something that can specifically remember being taken out. They took out the Zhong stuff.
Yeah, those are too big. Now, obviously, there's things like Great Divide, the Fortune Teller, Bato the Water Trap, which they folded in a little bit, but not
showed
much.
up, so he sort of got.
And they did the ice dodging thing.
Yeah,
there's a lot of more filler in
the
book
Fortune
1.
Teller, other than just seeing the freaking volcano being.
Yeah, that would have been a cool moment, but it makes sense why if they had to cut something.
The Zhong stuff you could maybe say that's kind of important, because it's.
Yeah.
It affects Aang in terms of wanting to learn how to bend.
Yeah,
like
I think they could have folded that in.
But then again, if they also cut out Aang doing any water bending at all, it doesn't really make sense to have him do any fire bending.
That's true. That'd be very weird if they did that. Yeah. Let's see, anything else? Oh, I do want to give a shout out to whoever designed and created the creatures, because Appa and Momo look quite well done.
Yeah, they were good.
Like, Appa was hard to do.
The best part of this show is Momo. When Momo sacrifices himself to save the.
That caught me off guard the first time I watched it.
I was number one.
I was like,
I was about to riot.
Are they going to kill Momo?
If Momo died, I was ready to riot, but I was also like, Momo's an absolute.
It was also
hero.
a creative way to show what spirit water can do too, without just saying
they
it.
They showed the healing power.
It makes sense. But like, yes, anyone could have done it, but
freaking Momo stepped.
Because Momo really didn't do much. I kind of forget he's there.
He's a freaking hero. Momo's a freaking hero.
No, they looked good though. I was kind of surprised. Nyla. We saw several ostrich horses, which was kind of cool.
We didn't really talk about June, but it was cool seeing June.
Oh yeah, she was there.
Was awesome.
June, they had Boomy.
She showed up on the island though, like
That's very weird.
Fire Temple Island. Not sure how she got there.
I'm guessing she just was on a boat, but they could have just shown her.
They didn't show her getting on the boat.
Because she is on a boat in the animation, so I guess she could, but also I don't know.
They didn't show it, so it's just I don't know. It was
that's one of those things you can bypass, but it's kind of
when she
bothersome.
finds Aang on the island, you're like, how'd that happen?
Yeah, because the first time I didn't even question it, I was like, wait, that's an island.
Yeah.
And it's kind of far off than anything. It's not even like a little, separated piece of land. I don't know. But, yeah, they had Boomy. That's the main, like, side characters that was there, kind of. That aren't, like, necessarily crucial to the story, but are there, that are fan favorites.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else really showed up that was like...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Jet and the Freedom Fighters.
Oh yeah, it was cool that they included all those. I didn't know if they would include all of them.
Squeak
and the Duke and Spellerby.
Well,
oh yeah, and also one change, they moved up Secret Tunnel. Cave of Two Lovers, which is neat. Yeah. But that was another way. It's kind of interesting because One thing they did.
But it didn't involve it with the Katang romance at all. It was basically
No.
It was basically
They could go back to it.
It was basically Sokka and Katara.
That was a clever way because honestly, that's how they get to Amashu. They're like, while we're here in Amashu, honestly, Katara and Sokka need something to do.
Well, they put like
let's move it up.
They put like multiple storylines in Amashu.
Because that episode's not important enough to do in season 2. We might as well do something while it makes sense.
So they kind of stuffed Amashu with a bunch of stuff.
They did though. Yeah, it was too much. It didn't necessarily make it bad, but it was too much.
Yeah, it was a lot.
But it was fun that they did that. I'm trying to think of anything else worthwhile talking about.
Gotta wait 2 years probably for.
Oh gosh, don't talk about it.
For book 2.
Okay, realistically, I'm thinking 2026. If they get because I saw the other day they already have the writers' room and they've been working on it since, like, even though they haven't been picked up yet, the writers were allowed to write a season 2 script. So if they already have it written, they could just jump in it, but still, there's so much post-production.
Yeah, they could begin filming pretty quickly.
They finished filming this in 2022.
Yeah, that actually won't take that long in terms of filming it, but
I think 2026.
Yeah, but the actual VFX work, it might be literally about 2 years from now.
But at least then they might film them simultaneously, so we might just have a year in between once we get it, which will be frustrating. But we have Avatar Studios coming up, so. I just want to see Toph.
You can just rewatch the cartoon.
I want to see Toph
50 times.
Yeah.
We've already probably rewatched it 50 times already anyway.
I will say this. Without, obviously, before the new season would come out, we'd probably rewatch this. Yeah. Do you see yourself rewatching this anytime besides that? I do.
Yeah. I mean, might as well. I mean, I watch a lot of things.
It's not one of those things where I'm like, I watched it. It's fine. It's solid, but I don't really care to watch it again. That's not me.
It's something to watch.
I enjoyed watching it. Yeah.
You can put it on in the background and enjoy it.
Not as much as the animation, but I definitely can see myself rewatching this again.
Yeah, I could see myself rewatching the Siege at the end.
Oh yeah,
or the first episode.
And honestly, the second rewatch, I really picked up on a lot of subtle things that I really enjoyed. Even some little tiny Easter eggs I won't even get into because I will just sound like a obsessed idiot. There were a few little artistic nods that they hid. If
someone's watching this, they're an obsessed idiot.
So. Like, well, hey, don't insult them.
I'm not insulting the viewer.
A lot of people watch reviews.
Like they'll just be concurring with what I'm saying. Like.
I do want to say that there's a lot of
into this video,
there's a lot of talk about this.
Watching at this point, they're an obsessed idiot.
Yeah. I didn't realize how deep we get into this, but honestly, with all the changes and stuff, it makes sense that there was a lot to talk about. There's a lot of talk about this. I definitely think, it's definitely on the positive side. I think they did quite well. I mean, like we said, we've hit rock bottom before. But even not comparing it, like
being honest, like the expectations
as an adaptation
are still pretty high. Like, it's still like,
especially after the trailer,
it's still something a lot of people are really heavily invested in. So if you can come away with a positive showing in most people's minds, and I think most people will look at this.
But yeah, if you're definitely, I see most people. I will say this: you can come up with a rating if you want to. If not, I would probably say 7.5.
Yeah, I'd be probably maybe more like a 7.
Yeah,
something like that.
The audience scores are all around. I think between Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, they're all 70 to 75. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair range.
Yeah, I think you're getting more 8s and 9s at the very beginning and at the end.
Yeah,
I think some of the middle dips down.
The middle, yeah, really kind
of. But yeah, overall, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it.
But yeah, I definitely recommend this if you're on the fence.
Bits again. I do wonder what people think if they haven't watched the show before.
I actually started watching a reaction video to someone that hasn't seen the animation, and it's so interesting.
There can't be that many people.
There's not. This is the first guy I've seen, but he's getting it seems, and he seems interested in it. So
that's cool.
I think if anything, this will help Avatar because just like the movie, that didn't hurt the franchise. I mean, if anything, it like lit up, like they're like, hey, I need to see the real thing. Like, it is not this. Don't think it's this.
I guess there's also more merch for this too.
Yeah. They haven't announced anything yet, which is kind of surprising. But I think they're with Netflix. They don't always jump the gun on that.
No, but there's got to be merch. Come on.
But yeah.
Like,
So yeah, definitely. I think
make
both
the
of
money.
us,
Make the money. Just
both
make
of
the
us,
money.
if you're on the fence watching this, we'd both recommend watching it and checking it out.
Of course.
As a fan, and definitely look at it somewhat as its own thing. It's not a carbon copy, but that's not what I want from an adaptation. I wanted this to be like have more depth to it.
Yeah, they add some more depth in some specific areas. It's got
And
a
the
little
visuals are amazing.
slightly
So
more slightly more mature elements in
Yeah.
certain ways, and
I definitely think it's worthwhile. It was a worthwhile reboot.
it'll be cool to see where it goes from
Oh
here.
yeah.
To have
That glorious day when we can watch Citizens Comment and just have the full series in live action.
yeah,
Oh
binge
my
the
gosh,
whole
that's
thing
so
in 2
cool.
days.
That's so cool. All right. Well, I think we both definitely give a thumbs up on this.
Yep.
7.5. Quite positive, especially
That's good.
living up to a show that honestly you could argue is perfect.
Unless you're just have insanely high expectations for this, I don't think you're really going to be disappointed.
That's why I preface like there are changes. I knew that going in. This is not a carbon copy. If because I've seen a lot of people really upset. It's and honestly given an unfair judgment. But yeah, definitely I think it's I'm about as big of an Avatar fan as you can get, and they did really well. But yeah, it's not a carbon copy, but if you are just wanting a good adaptation, this is definitely it, I think.
Yep, it was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for checking this out. I may do a few more videos on this. I'm not sure, but I for sure wanted to get this in-depth review to get all my thoughts out. I might try to, in a little bit, let the thoughts marinate a little bit, a few more weeks, and go back and go through a few more episodes and some things I might want to see expanded on in book 2. Now that I kind of see how this writer works and how the showrunner thinks of what they can add and stuff, that'd be kind of a cool topic to talk about. Maybe a little bit more into Toph's backstory and the Dai Li creation and stuff with Kyoshi. That could be really cool.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
yeah, so I should be back. I can't make any promises because I said I'll be back in 2019.
It's only been a decade.
But hey, Avatar, things are looking up. So yeah, thanks for watching and bye.